very appreciative of them having this time to speak, and also welcome the DOI here to Washington State. I'm here today to speak in opposition of federal recognition, and the answer to the first question is no, so therefore I'm not going to go with the other questions. All right, and also I'm here to represent MANA, Movement for Aloha no Kauanoe organization. Director is Dr. Jonathan Osorio. To start out my prepared statement, were the U.S. today, under its own domestic laws, rather through international law, government-to-government relationship with Kanaka Maoli Native Hawaiians, it would be violating once again the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which has never been legally obliterated insomuch as the U.S. has never conquered us. The kingdom resisted takeover using diplomatic, not military means, nor executed a valid treaty of cession annexation with us, either one of which was required in 1898 for an annexation to be valid under international law. The U.S. has no legal authority over our nation and no right to incorporate us as its native people. Since 1893, the U.S. has perpetuated numerous crimes against our people, including a determinative role in the overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani's lawful constitutional government, the rapid appropriation of lands, waters, and other resources, the attempted erasure of our history, language, and our culture, the strangling of our diplomatic relationships with the other nations of the world. These actions violated our right existence under international law in the 1890s and now violate our collective right of self-determination and individual human rights. Setting up rules for a federal relationship with a native governing entity would be the latest item in a long list of violations and demonstrate the U.S. government's utter unwillingness to take responsibility for the crimes against our nation. What the U.S. government ought to do between now and the restoration of our full independence is to officially recognize an interim trust relationship with the Kanaka Maoli, insomuch as it holds our lands and resources, depriving us of their benefits. Indeed, the United Nations imposes this international trust relationship on countries like the U.S. that hold territories which are denied self-right to determination or prevent from governing themselves. As we are not at this moment able to exercise our sovereignty in our own country, the U.S. must ensure that the Hawaiian people do not lose the rights and prerogatives, however inadequate, that have been garnered by Hawaiians since the American takeover. In other words, the U.S. should inflict no more harm as the Hawaiian nation continues to unify and strengthen itself. The U.S. may also be bound by its own domestic laws, specifically the 1993 Apology Resolution, in which the U.S. recognized its complicity in the loss of our government while committing itself to an unspecified process of reconciliation. The imposition of the status of a client state on the Kanaka Maoli is another aggression and not reconciliation. Consequently, no federal agent should cooperate with state initiatives like Act 195 roll call. That would limit the Hawaiian nation's effort to restore its government. Finally, the U.S. needs to understand that an increasing number of people believe that restoration of our independent government is not only viable and reasonable, but inevitable. This makes the political climate, the future of Hawaii, very different and somewhat more precarious than in 1959 when Congress declared Hawaii a state, or even in 1993 when tens of thousands of Hawaiians were seeking limited self-government. The Department of Interior and the state of Hawaii should not attempt to influence or interfere with the nation building that has been ongoing among Kanakas for the past 30 years. The goodwill and aloha shown by Hawaiian activists will quickly sour if either the U.S. or the state of Hawaii uses tactics to divide and alienate our people from one another. We believe the Hawaiian sovereignty movement can and will produce a peaceful and just resolution of political and legal problems created by the U.S. if it is not prevented from growing at its own pace and according to its own ideals. We do not want just any government body. We want the restoration of our independent government, and we reserve nothing less than that. Through our patience and our nonviolent persistence, we have earned the faith of those who inhabit these islands alongside us, and we will not disenfranchise others nor deprive them of their rights. We do insist, however, on claiming our rights as a sovereign people and on the U.S. and state policy makers keeping their hands off of our efforts. This does not mean that the U.S. does not owe reparations to the Hawaiian nation for its use of our national lands, waters, for its own benefit and security. Between June 23rd and July 8th, the U.S. Department of Interior held 15 hearings in Hawaii seeking input from Kauanoe on a possible rule change in federal law that would allow for a government-to-government relationship with Native Hawaiians. Throughout these packed hearings, you witnessed an outpouring of love and patriotism as testimony after testimony rejected the proposed rule change, rejecting federal recognition and reaffirming over and over that the Kingdom of Hawaii still exists as a subject of international law. And it is through international law that we expect to move forward to restore justice to our people, lands, and government. The passion, love, and acknowledge expressed at these hearings was awe-inspiring and have touched a new era of unified dedication to justice amongst our people. We call on the Department of Interior and the Obama administration to move forward under the proposed principles of democracy, heed the voice of the people of Hawaii, and seize any further support for U.S. federal recognition of Native Hawaiians, despite what efforts particular individuals who claim to represent our people may say or pushing on the contrary. After weeks of oral and written testimony and nearly unanimous opposition to federal recognition, the only moral action for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to take is to abandon Act 195. But we learned that OHA is indeed proceeding with the status quo, providing that they do not represent the concern and hopes of the Hawaiian community. The Department of Interior should not assist the Native Hawaiian community in reorganizing our government or facilitate the establishment of a government-to-government relationship. The Department of Interior also should not be involved itself in support with current state of Hawaii-driven efforts to establish a government entity. We base our position upon the following principles. 1, we believe the nation building cannot be initiated, controlled, or monitored by the occupying state or state representative of a nation or local level. 2, we believe that any nation building effort must start with us, the Lahui Kanaka, larger Hawaiian community, from the bottom up, not top down. 3, we believe the terms of reconciliation must be set by those who have been injured, not by the offending party. 4, we believe the clauses and conditions granting the United States sovereign immunity and indemnification upholds ultimate power with the U.S. and prohibits true reconciliation. We reject and condemn any offers or models that do not uphold these principles and the legal problems created by the U.S. if we are not prevented from growing on our own pace and according to our own ideals. In closing, I just want to acknowledge and thank everyone for being here today. The Department of Interior hearings, these hearings, no matter what side of the issue you took, under international law today, stand here as the movement for Aloha no Ka'aina. Our message to the Lahui is to remain steadfast, heed the call of the Queen and Onipa'a. We call on the Lahui to organize your families, your neighborhoods, and your mokus, to hold your own public dialogues and educational forums. Continue to have full faith in yourselves and in your communities and in your Lahui. We will continue to speak for ourselves in a clear, educated, and unified voice. We know who we are. We are Kanaka Maoli. We are Hawaiian nationals. We are not Americans. The U.S. has no legal authority over our nation, and we will continue to challenge them to prove otherwise. Again, thanks for the Tule Nation for having this meeting and on native lands. Aloha.
Thank you. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. The comment was made earlier about land being taken into trust, and I wanted to reiterate what Jennifer said is this process that we're asking questions about would down the road conceivably create a government-to-government relationship with Native Hawaiians. That doesn't necessarily mean that Native Hawaiians will be lumped in like American Indians. So the regulations that allow the Secretary to take land into trust for Indian tribes, we don't see that automatically applying to a government-to-government relationship. I know there's been some debate, about private property versus trust land property, and that's, even within the Indian community, there's back and forth between which process is preferred. But I just wanted to clarify that any type of rule that we're considering or that we would consider would not automatically incorporate everything that.
Okay, may I interject? We don't want to go down that path. That's why we're adamantly saying no. It is all about the land. The same talking points used to enslave our black cousins. I'm part Moroccan, which is North African. And our indigenous cousins, it's the same talking points that I'm hearing from the Department of Interior. We're shutting it down, and we're saying no.
Okay,
We're
I
not
just
going to
wanted
go down that
clarify
path about
I
land.
just wanted to clarify that one doesn't equal the other.
Of course not, but it's always when everything American government touches, they destroy. And it's always about the land. I have been in real estate for 10 years, real estate and real estate law. It's always about the land. You displace the native people, you displace their keiki. And we're not going to stand for that. With all due respect to the tribes, Puyallup as well as Tulalip, we don't want that. We have evolved to relearn from our indigenous cousins. We've learned a lot. I have friends who are members of this tribe as well as Puyallup. And I've learned a lot from what they say. It's about the land. And we're not willing to lose our roots. That's why we're saying no, absolutely not.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to state that we're the Department of Interior, so the questions that we ask are only within the scope of the Department of Interior. We understand it's an emotional issue and there are a lot of different perspectives, some that incorporate international law. To the degree that you can, please try to, state your comments within the framework of the Department of Interior's jurisdiction, because we have no say what Secretary of State or what the State Department would do in this instance. And so when we hear those comments, it's not within the scope of the Department of Interior. So I just want to clarify that. And also, I want to clarify that if you have long written statements, please submit them to the regulations.gov. But just today, for the purposes of the discussion, please try to summarize your written statements if you have them. Give your top points and summarize them so that we can make sure that everybody has a chance to comment. So right now in the queue, we have right up here and then right here. Sound good?
How do you establish the queue?
They raise their hands.
It's on the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pardon me. That's what I thought the list was for. That's the queue.
Oh no, I was just asking if anybody wanted to make a statement.
Establish it. Use the.
Okay, I will establish it right now. So if you raise your hand and you haven't made a comment, then I'll answer. I'll try to get you the mic in the order that hands are raised, and then once everybody's had an initial comment, then we'll go to second commenters. Okay? So right now we have. Okay, so we'll go here and then here and then here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Aloha kakayaka. Good morning. Mahalo for coming together, creating a forum to bring people together. My name is Kalani Opua, and I am a Kanaka Maoli. I am a native Hawaiian, and not by that legal definition, but under the definition of the Kingdom of Hawaii, which continues to exist. It is currently occupied by the United States, which is illegal under international law, under US law, and under Hawaiian Kingdom law. I am here because as a Kanaka Maoli, it is my kuleana, it is my responsibility to speak out against this forum. This is not the appropriate forum. The appropriate forum would be under the Department of State and would be between a nation and another nation, which is the Kingdom of Hawaii. So this is an improper forum. So I do not agree to make any comments on the questions because I don't want to be interpolated into this framework, which is corrupt and immoral just on the foundation of it. And we have to ask the question, why are we being called to provide commentary with the Department of the Interior and not the Department of State? That presumes that the burden should be on us as Kanaka Maoli, but the burden should be on the United States. Can the United States prove that the kingdom does not exist? And if you cannot, then why are we even here? Why are we wasting US tax dollars to provide this kind of forum? when it's improper. And also, I think it's important for Kanaka Maoli living on Turtle Island or the continental U.S. to speak out not only against the U.S. occupation in Hawaii, but militarism in general across the globe and how it's being used to dispossess Native people in other parts of the world. And so I'm here to speak out, speak in opposition to continuing militarism and continuing military buildup. And I also want to acknowledge my elders, Uncle Danny in the front, Uncle Stan. I see a lot of my elders. My dad served in the U.S. military for many years, so that's the reason why I ended up here. He didn't have employment opportunities back home, so he joined the military. Next thing you know, I end up here in Washington State, but I grew up in Waianae, Oahu, which is known for being a very impoverished area in Hawaii. And I watched my grandma and I watched my aunties and my uncles work so hard to put food on the table, okay, and struggle to make rent or pay the mortgage, and to pay for all the food, to feed the ohana, to feed the family. And they had very limited resources. Their land had been taken away from them. And they inherited that legacy. They inherited that real politic. There's a real politic here. There are real pressing issues. It's not just an ethical concern, but there are real everyday issues that Kanaka Maoli are having to endure, or not, as the case may be. I'm here to speak out against the continuing U.S. occupation of Hawaii. I'm also here to speak in support of my elders who didn't have the opportunity to question the illegal occupation of the U.S., who were brainwashed in many ways to join U.S. empire building projects across the world. And I'm here to give voice to that as a mo'opuna and as a kumu myself. And I want to teach my students at the University of Washington about the real history and what it means to be a real American patriot would mean that they would support the de-occupation of Hawaii. And so mahalo.
Ew.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Alice Kai'u Lenny Milham. I am Kanaka Maoli and a resident of Portland, Oregon, board member of Keikukui Foundation, and a member of Kaleimaile Hawaiian Civic Club of Honolulu. I want to thank the Tulalip for hosting this meeting and for their great generosity to the Hawaiian people of the Pacific Northwest. Especially our foundation has been blessed with support from the Tulalip. That's been very welcomed. Hawaiians living on the continent have historically not been eligible for benefits that come from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Many of the programs, grants from elite trusts are not available to our Hawaiians here. So we really appreciate the support of the Native Americans of this area. And I think that's probably the case throughout the continent, is that we've had, as Hawaiians, we've had great support from Native American people. And I want to thank you folks also for having this meeting. And just the opportunity for us to share our thoughts about the future of our people and our lands. But my response to the questions is no. Others have already talked about the historical reasons why the sovereignty of our nation that endures. But the reason I want to share is that it would simply be unsustainable for the process of federal recognition and the proposed government-to-government relationship for our people and our lands and our waters. Clearly, we Hawaiians are not Native Americans. America's 2,500 or so miles away from our islands. But we are very much like Native Americans. Our connections with our lands is profound. Chief Seattle was one of the Native people that really spoke eloquently about that, the interconnectedness of all things, and understood, and Native American people understand these things very, very well. And then we're also very different from Native Americans for the fact that we're island people, and our island dwelling makes it especially unsustainable for us to continue the current relationship with the United States of America. Because that relationship, the existing relationship, has caused great devastation to our home. Some of you probably have heard that Hawaii is the extinction capital of the world. The only lands that the federal government has agreed to turn over to our people is the island Kauanoe, which was used since the Second World War for bombing practice. And it's been a little over 10 years of cleanup effort there, and $400 million, and it's just 10% cleaned up now. Other examples, Makua Valley, a place where there are 40 endangered species, has been subjected to live fire training, and people who live there were evicted. They even put a target on a church and blew it up. And there have been, as a result of the training going on there have been 250 fires. There are other parts of our islands, also Pohakuloa, where depleted uranium, which is very questionable about the impacts, is used. There are ongoing disturbances. Because we are island people, our ancestors are buried all throughout the islands, and there are ongoing disturbances of our ancestors' graves under the current relationship. I don't know of anywhere else in the United States where it's okay to go and dig up people's ancestors all the time. RIMPAC, biennial, I think it is, every couple of years, the United States hosts military exercises off our waters, invites all these other countries to come and do their war games, sinking ships, torpedoes, the whole, you can imagine what's involved there. So, and you can imagine the impact to our marine life, our fisheries. I saw a photo the other day of a whole bunch of dead fish washed up on a beach in Hawaii during the RIMPAC exercises, which are concluding today. I think they had, this time, 22 nations, 55 vessels, 200 aircraft, and 25,000 personnel practicing war in our waters. Under the current relationship with the United States, Hawaii is considered ground zero for GMO test fields. So our once productive islands that fed over 1 million people by themselves and now has to import 90% or more of their food. And if there was an interruption in our food supplies due to a natural disaster or war or something, we would be out of food in 3 days. And now our agricultural lands are used for GMO experimental field tests. And that involves, because we have such a wonderful year-round growing season and isolation and everything else, they've chosen the Hawaiian Islands to be the world center. All the biotech companies are there, and when they grow GMO crops, they dump tons and tons of pesticides, restricted use pesticides included, that have been found to cause birth defects of children, where they're spraying these pesticides right next to schools. That's so horrendous to know that that permanent damage is going to be done to our lands, our waters. Everything that comes down in those pesticides goes into our land, goes into our waters, and affects everything. The Jones Act, under our relationship with the United States of America, we're subjected to the Jones Act in Hawaii, which means that everything that's imported from, I believe it's Asia, but it might be other parts of the world, but instead of coming directly to Hawaii, it has to go to the west coast of America and then back. So an outed 5,000 miles is mandated by the United States government laws. And then the prices of what Hawaiians pay for things that are imported, like oil, just oil alone, they're paying $4,000 a year for that extra transportation. Every Hawaiian. And our sacred mountain, Mauna Kea, is completely overrun with observatories and telescopes, and there's plans for more telescopes, and it would be like someone, I guess, putting antennas or something all over Notre Dame or some other sacred place that the world recognizes, but not ours. Under the current system, it's not recognized as a sacred place, and that continues. And one final point, no, I'm not going to. So, I can't see that a federal recognition or a government-to-government relationship with the United States of America would be good for Hawaiians, because history has shown us that the United States of America is not taking care of our islands. We need to take care of our islands, and I think we island-dwelling people who evolved on these islands for thousands of years know best how to take care of islands. This is America is, sea to shining sea, right? They took the whole continent, essentially, North America. And that's the mentality. That was the mentality, and I think it kind of still is, that frontier mentality where there's always more. Well, there's not always more when you're an island people. And I don't think it's sustainable, and I'm very much opposed to anything but our total independence for our Hawaiian people, and our lands and our future depends on it.
So just a quick point, I know you're next, and then we have a couple other folks that will, okay, so here, and then here in the back, and then we'll do 3 at a time. But you bring up a good point about the state, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and the benefits not being available to folks in the Kauanoe U.S. And I just wanted to say that from my perspective, I'm a tribal person. I'm Navajo, from the Navajo Nation, and I didn't always live on the reservation. I lived in Maryland when I was younger, and I lived in Los Angeles when I was younger. But my tribal citizenship always went with me. Even right now, I can apply for absentee ballots to vote, get education assistance when I go to school. And so just, the framework for having a self-governing entity that has that government-to-government relationship almost broadens the scope of that. And I just want to make that point, is that right now the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is embedded within the state. It's a state entity, and so there's limitations on the types of benefits that they can provide to folks on the mainland. So I just want to make that point about the government-to-government relationship and from my perspective. Okay.
Aloha kako. My name is Miley Alicia Mokihana Lono Batura, and I come from the Lono Ohana, and I see my auntie back there, and I see a lot of people I love and respect in this room. So, and also I just want to say thank you to Department of Interior for hosting this, because I can't imagine this is easy to do, and I respect that, and I really want to just, I'll make it brief. I call Mike because I don't have no written speech or nothing, but I just wanted to be here to represent my ohana, who is actually divided on this completely. So we don't even agree, and that's just part of life, right? And so what we're going to have today, I'm sure, and through all these meetings, is people who don't agree, but this is an option, and I think it's imperfect maybe right now, but that's the whole point of collecting these comments. And so I just wanted to be a representative voice for that and say, our family, when we go back to Hana, because that's where we're from, they say, oh, you're going back to America, have fun in America. And it's funny because, a lot of them believe that. It is very divided. I think the thing that we all agree on that is common ground, though, for our ohana is that we love our family, we love our culture, and we want what's best. So whatever that is, whatever shape that takes, whatever form it goes, just imua it. Imua it. I don't, any of this business about being so divided that we cannot agree, we have to get it all out there. And that's why I appreciate all the different points of views. And that's why I think that I'm supportive of recognition, because I think that we do need this for our keikis. I see my dad, 100% Hawaiian. You're right, it is extinction. These guys are going to be POW pretty soon. And then I have my daughter, and then they'll have kids, and then what for them? We got to think about all those points, very good points brought up today. But I support it because I do think that it will move us forward. If we have input on it like we're doing today, I think we can make it right. And if we stand up and have a voice, we can make it right. I have full confidence in our people, full confidence in aloha. And it's brief, I just wanted to say that, but mahalo.
Thank you, and I just wanted to follow up on a point that she said is, us at Interior see this whole process as an option. It's not, so the difference between a statute and a regulation is that a statute, a lot of tribes get recognized through a statute. And that's Congress acting, saying this is an Indian tribe. And by statute, Congress has acted to recognize that tribe. A regulation can sit on the books for years and not be used. So what we're presenting is like an opportunity that when and if Native Hawaiians decide that they want to exercise this opportunity, they can do that. But it's not forcing anything on Native Hawaiians. It's just there. It's like it's been described in Hawaii as a door for the future. And as Jennifer said earlier, we have a small window in time right now where we have a president that's supportive. This administration has been supportive of this initiative, and we don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't know who's going to be elected next, and we don't know if they're going to be supportive or if this is going to be a priority for them. And but whatever we can accomplish during this administration, if it's setting up an option or a door that never gets used, at least it's there. And so that's kind of how we see it. The question was asked, why are we here? Well, this is the Department of Interior acting. We're stepping forward and we're trying to act and ask questions about how the best way to move forward with this initiative is. If State Department steps forward and they act, that's a different situation. But we're here, representing Secretary Jewell for the Department of Interior. And these are just questions that we're asking. And I also want to emphasize that there's nothing written at this point. The advance notice of proposed rulemaking is an optional front-end part to the rulemaking process. So usually an agency will draft a rule and they'll put it out and they'll ask for comments on that rule. It'll be a draft rule, but we haven't even drafted a rule yet. So these are really just questions, they're scoping questions, and I just wanted to reiterate that, and we'll go ahead and move down the line.
I got 2 minutes, I'm going to read. Normally, among First Peoples, it's oratory. Yatahe. Oisa. Funny thing is, I'm Hawaiian, but I went to school in Durango, Colorado, so I got to sleep, live in, rest in a Hogan. Nahoho Hogan. And you remind me so much of my brother back there, my Navajo brother. Whew! As a visitor, please pardon my tribal protocol omission. I'm not versed in your culture, so sorry for making mistakes. Aloha, raise my hands. I raise my hands to all elders, brothers and sisters of First Peoples around the world, to the consolidated tribes of Tuleva. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to come to your land. To sit with you in Indian country, here in this fine house. If it's not in People and the museum, at least it's in this fine house that former resident Sam Askew is the manager. Catch the point? We're all of them. I raise my hands to the Kanu families of the past 21 years, and to Pal, to Bella, 2014. Frank Brown started this 21 years ago. He is my mentor in justice, in native justice. Those of you from the Pacific Northwest, you understand what Frank Brown went through when he went off in isolation. Kanakamo'ole, sovereignty. To my Suquamish friends, Suquamish. I live in Poulsbo, Washington. The Suquamish tribe is in 5 miles from where I live. They have been guiding me for 9 years in self-governance. I sat on the committee when they did the consultation, government to government with the military. Beyond that. Also, I raised my hand to the recorder because without her, we're going to have difficulty going forward. My brothers and sisters in Indian country, we are not here for your assets. We're here for our rights, land rights, native culture rights, indigenous people's rights, which America at first did not agree to back in, I forgot when. I'm 71, but I forgot when. But finally, we got approved. My brothers and sisters of First Nations, I appreciate your encouragement as we Hawaiians continue our journey on self-governance. I praise that you're examples to the world's indigenous peoples. You really are, because look, how many tribes are there in the Department of the Interior? Over 200. And each of you is an independent nation. I raise my hands to you. It is important, however, to let the Hawaiian community work this out. Our brother from Puyallup says, "We're leaving alone. It's your battle. Thank you." I am Herbert Kamukai Jr., born in Hilo. I'm 50% Hawaiian blood, 50% Chinese blood. I'm over the hill. I am an awardee of Hawaiian homes because I don't have ohana to pass it on, descendants. I don't have successorship. Good topic, think about it. And so I pass it off to my brother, to 50%. So, I think I speak with wisdom. Besides, my grandfather was the one who helped those in Kailua or Kona, following the Kuleana Act, write their deeds in Hawaiian and insert it subject to native rights. So, my brother from Kona, he understands what we're talking about. There was a time the Hawaiians couldn't, but irregardless. I'm a 61 Kamehameha Schools alumni, active member of Moko'aina, Awakine Kona Hawaiian Civic Club, soon to be also member of Kohio, Hilo. I advocate getting the Hawaiians per HHCA 1920 onto Hawaiian homes lands first and foremost. See where I'm going? To the Department of Interior, U.S. Federal Administrative Oversight of Native Hawaiians and 200 plus Native Americans, Native American tribes. I raise my hands that you are concerned and arrange this meeting in Indian country. This is right. DOI and DOJ, DOJ the mediator, bringing us together under one roof, united but still separated. To Director Sally Jewell of Renton, Washington, one-time President CEO of REI, one of the best co-op companies in America, can get people work together. Anyway, to Director Sally Jewell of Renton, I thank you for the 5 threshold questions, June 2014, and then the follow-up 19, which came later. I know that President Obama, 2009, Executive Order 13175, directed DOI to promulgate rules. Rules for consultation, and DOI would like to get this job on the books before former Hawaii resident President Obama retires. I say DOI should channel energy and talent to the actions recommended in DOIG audit. You know, the book From Mauka to Makai. The other book, the Hawaiian Homes DOI report on the task force, I forgot, 1998. Before more federal and state regulation take our assets and our beneficiaries of Hawaiian Homes Act 1921, like me, go maki. I would prefer to explore and keep all options open. You know, like read John Osorio's Dismembering Lahui, Native Indigenous Rights by Melody Mackenzie, Who Owns the Crown Lands of Hawaii by John Van Dyke, Gavin Dawes, Shoal of Time, Ke'anu Sai, Awaiting International Court Decisions, Mililani Trask, former OHA Secretary, your local Hawaiian Civic Club. Check your Hawaii tax maps, Bureau of Conveyances, land title transfers. Get smart, Hawaii. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Gabriel Makanani Reyes Gomez. I'm born and raised Maui Lahaina. Nice to meet you all. Aloha. Maui no koe, yeah? No, okay. Get serious over here. First I want to say mahalo to the Tulele tribes and also the indigenous people of the continent here. This is your people's land. Thank you for welcoming us. Thank you too for taking down our words. For real, it's a hard job, yeah, but we all speak real kind of angry and any kind, but mahalo, yeah. So, a couple things I like to address, or want to address, are changing it out of proper English and Pidgin, because when you're around family, that's all. So, I guess first, I would like to address is this meeting here. Today, we came here to learn about this process and to discuss it, yet when you came in here, you presented the way we talk about this, the talking points, 5 talking questions, although there are 19. And although the other half of those 19 are supposed to help us influence our decisions and help us speak out about our feelings, influence those things, we didn't discuss any of those things. We didn't discuss any of those other 19 questions on there, a lot of which you told us not to talk about in the beginning. It talks about the Hawaiian role, it talks about Hawaiian lands, it talks about all of those things, but we're not supposed to talk about that. I think it's hard to have faith in the DOI and the processes that are going on now if it's confusing, if the meetings that we come to are confusing. And while I don't agree with federal recognition, I do admire what is being done now here. And I do ask that if we're gonna have meetings like this, there's much more preparation to be had, because this is almost a slap in the face to our people. Not on behalf of you guys, by all means, thank you for being here. You know, thank you for being respectful and trying to speak up on your guys' behalf, because honestly, you've had a longer relationship with the United States than we have. And I've been blessed, the minimal time I've been up here, blessed to hear a lot of testimony from various nations all across, over 566 right now, federally recognized nations, yet somehow none of us really learn about them. Federal recognition is supposed to open up a door to what? Nothing. When are the people of this country, the branch, that is extended, Department of the Interior, when are you going to tell the rest of the country about those 566 federal recognized tribes? I'm 27. This is 2014. I don't know any of them. More and more I learn. And the more I come up here, the more I learn that your own citizens don't even know about them. And so that's why we're afraid, and that's why we respond variously. Some of us want federal recognition, some of us don't want federal recognition. But it's confusing. And for us to have any kind of trust in you or any process like this, we need to be honest. Be honest. I know we have good intentions, but be honest. Obama administration, I can understand there's some people that really do want to help the Hawaiian people, but for real, he was born and raised in Hawaii. Doesn't speak up about it. 8th president to visit a tribe. How long this country exists already? I cannot take that serious. And for that, I say no. And because I say no, according to the way we set this up, that means the other questions somehow go out the window, because we didn't prepare to come up with a plan. For if I say no to that, then I have to shut up. Or all of a sudden, my words don't mean anything because I didn't speak in the proper form that you would actually listen to us. And I understand you guys' job is hard, because after this, you gotta take plenty words what we said, pull it down to about a page or a couple pages, and then report that to your boss, yeah? So that's really all I have to say. Mahalo to everybody here. Hopefully we can continue through this, and if there's the secondaries, maybe we can address some of the questions and concerns that we had. But mahalo to you and mahalo to everybody else.
I'd like to respond to the gentleman's comment. Thank you for that. The 19 questions, we understand this is a confusing process. The 19 questions are really there as guideposts. As you know, the Department of the Interior is the lead agency on Native American, Alaska Natives, and other indigenous communities in the United States. There are over 200 years of expertise at the agency. When we were devising the AMPRM, we merely were brainstorming about how can we assist the Native Hawaiian community and others who are interested in this process and get them into thinking about how they can have a role and a leading role in developing their own government. So those are really just guidepost questions, and I understand your point is well taken, sir, about how I said that the UNPRM isn't about some things, but those questions relate to precisely those things. It's really about nation building and land. Yes, it is important to nation building, but the ANPRM itself would not affect the status of Hawaiian homelands. So that's really my point there. And I'd also like to address the fact that of the Obama administration. President Obama is a son of Hawaii. It took so much hard work and determination for us to get here, but we wouldn't be here without his full support. He is the first president in our history to be the friendliest president towards indigenous rights and Native American, Alaska Native sovereignty principles in our nation's history. We have to start somewhere, and President Obama is doing that. I come from Santa Clara Pueblo. My nation is north of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we're a very, very small tribe. We've had a government-to-government relationship with the United States officially since 1934, and that's the date of the Indian Reorganization Act. My elders tell me that the process of reestablishing a government-to-government relationship or establishing one at that time was so fractious. People couldn't decide. Families were torn apart. People, we talk in a kiva, we talk in a small little house, and we hash things out. And it was very, very difficult for my elders to decide to enter into that, to take that step, to move forward in order to have a government-to-government relationship. And in a lot of ways, that's the reason why I'm here. That's the reason why my culture has been preserved and my language exists and my children will be able to participate in my traditions, is because my tribe has been able to exercise their sovereignty and have a seat at the table with the United States over negotiating with respect to the disposition of land and natural resources, the preservation of languages, using federal funds to get the job done, to preserve our culture and to make sure that my community stays intact for the next 7 generations and the next 7 generations and on and on. So I really thank you for your words, and I hear a lot of passion, and I respect that. And I think Derek and I both have a personal stake in listening to these stories that you have. So again, thank you.
My name is Gene Razor. I may look very Howley, but I am Hawaiian. I'm 5 generations Kamehameha schools. My ancestors were chiefs of Mokuokeawe, the Big Island. And Hana is part also of Mokuokeawe. Family land, Hana. Okay. I never prepare because I let it come from my ancestors that day. Today I heard you talking about Mauna Kea. Mauna Kea, most sacred mountain in the entire Pacific. And during the time of our ancient chiefs, above the 6,000 foot level, if you were not born from the right families and you crossed that line, you were killed. Each pu'u on the mountain had different classes of kahunas, and they would kill you. Okay. Enough for Mauna Kea, because the depleted uranium is right. I sat on the Mauna Kea advisory board for almost 7 years. And depending on who the base commander is, things change. Okay, you also mentioned the pesticides and all the chemicals they dumped on us. And because of that, okay, yes, Agent Orange used the defoliant in Vietnam. 90% of it, Monsanto used on the island of Kauai. The rest of it was on the island of Oahu. And guess what? To this day, they have not disclosed every area that they used Agent Orange. So we've had kids playing in the Kuahivi, and they get sick, and nobody knows why. one of my really close friends, from the Kamakabiwiola family in Honoka'a. We stayed at the church over there, just on the Mauka side of the highway. He was a Vietnam vet. He died about 4 years ago from Agent Orange that he contracted for the wars for this country. Okay, now, and before I go far off the track, another part, Hawaiian homelands. Do you know when Prince Kuhio, even though he's a representative, technically doesn't have a vote, but he made the initial offerings. Do you know what the original offering for Hawaiian homeland was, the quota? 1/32. But do you know why? It's because in the early 1500s, right off from the place where my mother and my aunts and my family were born in Napopo, a Spanish ship sank. It got caught in a Kona storm. Worst weather in the Pacific for the Hawaiian Islands. Hurricanes, that's just like somebody going compared to a Kona storm. They can last for months. And in that particular time, 3 Spanish ships got wrecked in the Kona storm. One of them, and probably 2, because it depends on the story or who told the story. They appeared 2 weeks later after the storm had subsided off Napopo. And the beach over there is called Kulo because 2 descendants of the captain crawled ashore, a little boy and a little girl. And that's why in Kona, for the ones that know Moko Kokeawe, people from South Kona, Makai knew Ehu, hair, red hair and green eyes, because those ships belonged to Cortez, who was a Catalano, and they were redheads, not black hair. Okay, now, because of all these things, what happened to this 1/32 that Prince Kuhio wanted? No. The federal government, U.S. Congress, made it 50%. Immediately creating another separate class of Hawaiians. It doesn't matter. We are Hawaiians. Whether you have 1 drop or you're 100%, our Na'au is Hawaiian. Our ancestors, as far back as they can go to Io, are Hawaiian. It will never change. Okay, now I wanted to address, and mahalo for having us here. Navajo. My first cousin spent 40 years, and she's still there, as a medical, she married a Navajo, she went there to be a medical tech, and she stayed there, and she's still on the reservation to this day. I just saw her family reunion. Her husband died shortly after, but she's been there for over 40 years now, and she loves it, okay? My half-brothers, 5 half-brothers born on the Montana reservation for the Assiniboine. So another Native people's contact. My 2 oldest sons are descendants of the Trail of Tears Indians, the Cree and the Choctaw that walked 2,000 miles to Oklahoma, and most of them died. So yes, I feel for all of you because you're in the same predicament. But now the difference, and only because of what happened to what the United States did to us. They committed on the day that our queen was forced to leave the throne, when 120 or so Marines and Navy marched up with howitzers and field pieces and rifles in front of her palace to remove her from office. And in order to not break a law and create a reason for a war and a reason for them to physically take over, she acquiesced and said, I will wait for it to be settled by the United States government. Well, have they settled it yet? Ole. And this is why we're all here now. We're coming back to the same thing, and again, we're beating the same pahu. What is going on? We know who we are. We know what belongs to us. In 1959, my mom raised us, you know, and now they use no vote, no grumble, but I grew up with no vote, no grumble. She said, you have to go and vote anytime that election is. If you don't vote, and she didn't use it, you know, the no vote, no grumble, the latest, but that basically was it. 1959, the very morning, I got up in the morning and I went, Mom, how come you're not going down to vote? And you know what her answer was? Very simple. There's nothing on the ballot for me. They didn't offer us any choice then. But not even, you know, because now the new generation, they don't even know what happened in 1959. So very simple things. And like I said, this is my know-how and my ancestors speaking. Nothing prepared. I just listened to notes and I knew what I had to say. In fact, when I came this morning, I wasn't even going to speak. I was just going to listen and then, you know, kuka with whoever was here and let it go at that. But these were important and it had to be done. Okay, mahalo.
Hello, my name is George Kauanoe. I've been living in Washington State for, I guess, over 20-something years. But anyway, I would like to give my mahalo to the Tulela tribe and thank you for hosting this gathering today. I would also thank DOI for what you're doing today, and I really appreciate it. I am Hawaiian, okay? Hanao Wakaina, born on the island, raised on the island, and then I left over 40 years ago. I've never been back since, except just on small vacations, all right? One thing I recall after I graduated from high school, I went to work with my dad. He was a construction worker, and we were going home to Wananalo one day, and my auntie was on the road holding a sign protesting the building of Nui Valley. And my dad said, look at auntie. What the hell is she doing? She don't know what she's doing. And we went home, right? A couple days later, he told me, you know what? Your auntie the only one backing us up. You know? And my dad never spoke too much. He was kind of quiet. But I always admired him. I only had one hero in my whole life. That was my dad. Anyway, on behalf of my father and my children, and for Hawaiian benefits, issues that we're losing, I say yes to federal recognition. Although I agree with sovereignty, as long as we keep fighting for sovereignty and we don't protect the rights we have remaining, we are going to lose it. We're going to lose it, period. So you want to fight for sovereignty? Fine, I'll back you up all the way. Because I am an old soldier. I'll go with you. But on the same regard, we need to protect whatever rights we have left before it's gone. I appreciate being enlightened by what happened in the past. What I care about is what we have now, what's remaining for my children and my mo'opunas, and the rest of our nation. That's what I care about, okay? We need to fix it. And like Uncle Danny said, all he's asking is, let us determine it, right? But in your regard, we need you to move as quickly as you can to get this done, okay? And again, I appreciate you coming over. I appreciate everybody else's comments. Mahalo to all. And I ask the Lord to bless this meeting, bless the Tulela tribe, and after this is all over, let's all go back home safely. Mahalo to everyone.